I'm Dale Smith for Loony Politics, and this last week, the Auditor General of Ontario released a report into what happened with the Greenbelt development and found some very concerning things, such as the fact that the Housing Minister, Stephen Clark's Chief of Staff, had met with developers who had recently purchased land in the Greenbelt, which was undevelopable. And by that, I mean when it had been previously public land and sold to a group of farmers, it was done under a legal covenant that this would always be agricultural land. And these developers had purchased this undevelopable land and then met with the housing minister, gave him, or the housing minister's chief of staff gave him these packages on which areas of land in the Greenbelt they would like to see developed, which coincidentally happened to be all of the land that they had purchased that had been undevelopable. And as a result, when the Ford government said that they would be developing this land, these developers stood to make about somewhere in the area of $8.2 billion with a B. Now, this is an example of some pretty egregious cronyism and corruption, and this should not stand in any particular way, and yet that's what's happening. Nobody's been fired. The chief of staff has kept his job. The housing minister has kept his job, and this is flying in the face of ministerial responsibility. Now, there is a misperception that ministerial responsibility means that the minister always resigns when something happens, but that's not actually true. In many cases, or most cases, what it just means is that there is clear corrective action that has been taken and that the minister can demonstrate that there is a chain of accountability still in place. But this goes beyond that. This is cronyism and corruption of the absolute worst order, and there is no way in which the chief of staff should have his job and which the minister should also have his job, because the minister is responsible for the chief of staff's conduct. He should have known this was happening, even though he claims he didn't. And for that, he cannot remain the minister. And if he doesn't tender his resignation, he should be fired by the premier. The premier has refused to do that as well. And instead, they're using all these lines about how mistakes were made, but they're going to carry forward with his development anyway, even though the process was corrupted. And this was a demonstration of cronyism for these developers. Now, this cannot stand in a democracy like ours. And if the premier cannot do his job and insists that the housing minister be fired for this egregious act, then the premier needs to resign as well. For Loony Politics, I'm Dale Smith.